Next up, we have 4.01, our magnet update, and I welcome Ms. Relford, Ms. Toma, Ms. Baker, and Mr. Pointer.
Good evening, President Meyer, Vice President Altman, members of the board, Mrs. Hamburg, and Mrs. Marshall. Thanks for having us this evening. I am excited to stand before you to give you an update on our progress of our magnet work that we've been doing over the past 2 years. This seems like longer than that. And within our team, we'll all take an opportunity to talk you through where we are, where we started, and where we are in our efforts. And so just to remind everyone that we started this work under the guise of a magnet review committee so that we could redesign or reinstitute or reset our focus for both our magnet programs at both Hanby and Emerson. We also wanted to dig into our curricular focus for each building and to align that work with our elementary curriculum and instruction committee, utilizing all board adopted resources and materials.
Over the course of the last year, the district curriculum specialist and curriculum director, that would be me for K-5, attended several staff meetings and TBTs, or teacher-based teams, to brainstorm, provide ideas or resources, and to support teachers with unit development. These conversations were really fun and allowed us to think about how we could use existing resources in new and exciting ways. We did have many stakeholders involved in this work, including classroom teachers, specials teachers, the instructional coach and school counselor. Families were involved, the PAST Foundation and the Educational Service Center of Central Ohio, including their project innovation side of the house, as well as the curriculum and instruction team. We tried to include many voices and different lenses in this work, and it allowed us to broaden our network with comments like, I know someone who could, or have you thought about, with just different people in different lenses. So I'm going to pause because I know we really want to hear from the fearless, passionate leaders who led this work and see some pictures.
Hi. Thanks for the counseling, by the way. I got a moment to say it, elementary counseling every day. Thank you. Emerson Magnet School. So we're inquiry-based learning, world culture, and fine arts. One of the first things we got to work with right away was determining what does inquiry look like at Emerson and generating what would be an Emerson-specific inquiry cycle that would start with sparking a student's curiosity. Then they would get into exploring a different topic, ideally cultivating some of those questions, activating some of that critical thinking. Then they would begin to create something, right? And that doesn't necessarily for us have to be a roller coaster as much as it could be a poem, as it could be a piece of literature. It could be a comic book. But when you think about the communication and collaboration that those type of things need, that's really where we're headed. Then an opportunity to reflect and revise. More confidence building, more opportunities for collaboration, and then ideally at the end they create a finished product. They share, they publish, they act upon that to an authentic audience, really diving deep into an authentic assessment at an elementary level. So what are some of the outcomes of the work? We went into the goal with hoping that, the goal being that a classroom would pilot an inquiry unit by the end of this school year. And the design work would continue. I'm happy to say that every classroom designed and implemented an inquiry unit by the end of this school year, and some really great things came out of it. I've got some examples up here of 1st through 5th. One of the driving forces for these inquiry cycles are those inquiry questions that really begin to stem and spark the curiosity for the students. So in 5th grade, how do photographs, books, and artifacts help us learn about the past? In 2nd grade, why is currency important in our society and our world? And I've got some photos that are kind of cool for this. 3rd grade, oceans. How do oceans impact our world and how can we protect it? 4th grade, what does it mean to have a great heart, both literally and figuratively? which is kind of cool too, because when you begin to tie in the cultural aspect of, some African cultures, sometimes literally, the community would be dictated by, hey, let's meet at the largest tree, right? And then the community would slowly grow from there. Some really great literal and figurative opportunities there. Fifth grade home runs in high fashion. Fifth grade actually has an essential question that spans the entire year. How does art connect the past, present, and future? And then from that, fifth grade has broken it down into specific unit essential questions that drive it further. In this case, how can sports influence individuals and societies, as well as did sports influence fashion or did fashion influence sports? Again, in a way to infuse the fine arts within it. Got some great pictures for you here. I'm going to work from left to right. So on the left is first grade. So they took a big part of this is students creating shared experiences. They took a virtual field trip to Joshua Tree and spoke with a ranger, Allison, about different animals and the habitats that may exist there. They had below that they had Franklin County Water and Soil come in, and they read Crawdad Creek, and there are different habitats within that creek or within that display in front of them, and they would take when they heard their animal and they would put it in the right habitat that it belonged in during that story. Moving to the right, that's second grade market. So our students learned about currency, different currency from around the world, designed their own currency, and we had some conversations. In one classroom I landed on the $20 bill, and one I landed on the $1 bill. So we had to adjust the evaluation for the teacher that I landed on the $1 bill. But what students then did is they generated a list of questions they had about how do businesses work, and they broke into small groups and went and visited 7 amazing businesses in Uptown Westerville who opened their arms, brought them in, answered their questions, and then they went back and they designed their own business. The currency that they designed was then handed out to all students who visited their shops. And all the students got to go shopping. So it could be anything from maybe some made slime. There was a long, long wait in Mrs. Pugh's spa. There was a lemonade stand. Some were comic books. Some were fortune tellers. It was very, very impressive what they were able to produce at the end of their inquiry cycle. Third grade, Discovering Oceans. At the top there, they were putting together a timeline of famous people that had happened in history, and where does that line up with some of that's their space unit, and where does that line up in space? Below that was third grade, Dissecting Squids as part of their oceans unit, and looking into some of the tribes that live almost holistically on the water in different areas of the world. For lack of a better phrase, think Moana, at the end of the movie. Pretty cool. To the right, notices and wonderings about Sudan and how some of the tribes there may get water and the difficulty it is to get water to and from and utilize it, as well as a great field trip out to the Cartoon Museum just outside of Ohio State campus to explore how words and feelings can be characterized and captured in picture form. And then down at the bottom was a great one. This is fifth grade. They actually went to the mural outside of behind Schneider's and reached out to the artist there, Nick Stoll, asked him if maybe he'd stop by and meet the kids, and he did, and he gave a great presentation. He's not from Westerville, so he brought out notes, rather lengthy notes, to explain to them who Benjamin Hanby was, and any Westerville student that's above third grade knows who Benjamin Hanby is. The kids chuckled a little bit, but then he took them on a really, really great walk of what all of the different pieces of his artwork meant and what they symbolized, and then actually came back and did the exact same artwork with the kids, and that's the picture you see on the bottom right there, which was a really great way to bring that back around and wrap that learning around. A lot of his artwork is about how does art influence the past, present, and future, and you can see that in his murals. So some really great opportunities for students to learn, some really good opportunities for students to show their learning while also really, really highlighting the questions and inquisitiveness that they have. Thank you.
We'll see if it works from back here. All right. Good evening. So at Hanby, we are focused on STEAM, and STEAM is science, technology, engineering, the arts, and math. It doesn't necessarily mean that we are doing entire units based on how to build a bridge. It's instead talking about design thinking and scientific reasoning and building all of that into how we approach learning on a daily basis. And so we are working toward STEAM designation with ODE, and that involves a rubric. And it's a nice nice-sized rubric. And so we dissected the rubric and figured out that we wanted to start first in the teaching and learning section of it. And that means that we need to focus on what it means when we talk about project-based learning, because that is an integral part of the teaching and learning aspect of the rubric. And so we spent the year really learning what PBL is, getting common language around each of the essential elements of PBL, and then we were tying them to the educational framework. And so the goal for the year was to make sure, well, to pilot, to float at least one PBL in every classroom. And so we did that, and the really cool thing about this is Hamby is 2 programs in one building, and everybody's doing it. And so we are creating a more cohesive culture through our STEAM focus, which is wonderful. And so we have some examples up here from each grade level. In first grade, we looked at driving questions. Driving questions are really essential questions. It's just driving questions is what we're going to use for our common language at Hamby when we're talking about the overall focus and figuring out each benchmark in each piece of a PBL. And so first grade, what adaptations would a human need to mimic an animal or plant in order to survive in their habitat? Second grade focused on landforms and habitats and ecology. How could you convince someone to visit different landforms and experience the beauty and uniqueness of each one? Third grade focused on Westerville history. How do stories from the past in Westerville define who I am today? Fourth grade focused on myths and storytelling, and they said, how can we use our understanding of the essential elements of myth-based and fantasy storytelling to make our own stories? And then one of the questions in 5th grade was, how can 5th graders address the problems of homelessness and food insecurity, so tying to economics. And so what I have a bunch of pictures for you, and I will do what Chris did and move from left to right. And so we have our 4th graders on one side. Our 4th graders actually partnered pretty closely with the ESC Project Innovation, and we brought in 3D printers from the ESC. And so we had 3D printers running in our 3rd floor for weeks, and they were creating artifacts that the students designed using the technology that goes with 3D printers. They created their own artifacts for the stories and the character development. And then with that, then they created some visual displays and talked through their stories for the other classes in the building. So that is the 4th grade presenting to other classes in Hamby in our library. And then if you move over one, our 1st graders started figuring out what it means to do inquiry learning. What does it actually mean? How do we ask questions instead of having questions asked of us? And we did that by getting bee-bots. And bee-bots are little robots that are bees, and they code the robots and have them go on these big mats and do whatever they want them to do. And so you have on the top, that is when they actually figured out how to code, and they were moving the robots, the little bees, and the picture right below is they were designing their questions. And so it was really neat to see our 1st graders go from, oh wait, I don't have to just answer questions, I'm going to ask the questions. So they were very excited. 2nd grade, we actually have several pictures here that kind of wrap around. 2nd grade did several different items. Before we get into their actual landforms, habitats, and ecology, they also partner with Generations. Partnerships are a big part of our designation, STEAM designation. And so that picture at the top where they're in their little red capes, that is their performance with Generations. And we worked with Generations, and then they presented at one of Generations' spring recitals. So that is at Westerville North, and they are doing a Little Red Riding Hood performance. And then down at the bottom, we have 3 pictures of the 2nd graders. They're at Alum Creek Park, and they are learning about the ecology in the river. And then next to that is their actual landform presentation, and they also did their public product within the Hamby community, so all of the different classes and grade levels were able to come and see what they did and ask questions and really give them those public speaking opportunities. And then we used our community garden right outside of Hamby to further explore some of the different natural impacts and of ecology. So That's second grade. The picture right in the middle is third grade. They went to the Works, and that's how they kind of did a launch for their inquiry-based unit. So they were involved in some design challenges at the Works. And then fifth grade, another part of fifth grade was a question around designing a playground that is safe and entertaining for all of our students. And so they were building things to scale. So they brought in a bunch of cardboard and created their own games, and that was how they kind of played with that idea to figure out how to build structures that are safe and engaging for kids. And that's Hamby. Our next steps, we are going to do a couple of retreats this summer to continue our work. We are going to build more PBLs, and that's going to help us get into developing our own design cycle. So we will have a Hamby-specific design cycle that will flesh out the rest of the teaching and learning aspect of the STEAM designation rubric. Thank you.
So that was a lot to take in, but as you can tell, we're excited about the work that we've been able to do in partnership with Hamby and Emerson. One thing that you heard Kaylee mention, and Chris, at Emerson, things were intertwined in their framework that totally align with our educational framework that we're using across the district. All of the units and all of this work is built upon our grade level standards and board adopted curriculum and materials. So we're using that as the foundation of the learning experiences that we prepare. And so now if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Any question?
So, of course I do. So how does this work with like Bridges and other pieces of curriculum? So how do you embed these pieces into it?
I'm going to have Chris and Kaylee talk about how they've done it, because this year, based upon the work from the committee, they've had firsthand experience watching that happen in motion. So I'd like for them to tell you a little bit about it. Is it?
So right now, we're not infusing Bridges into this work at Emerson, being world culture, fine art. Math is a bit of a standalone. Down the line, we just had conversations even this morning where we think that there may be opportunities to infuse math in some of the cultural pieces when you begin to explore maybe what some of the cultural recipes and other things may be, and getting into fractions. But at this stage in it, we're at Emerson mainly focused on ELA and social studies.
So give me some examples of those pieces of curriculum that you're kind of infusing in there then.
Sure. So when you kind of examine, like, let's say fifth grade, what they'll do is run a Native American unit, still utilize the standards that are outlined in Wit and Wisdom. But then we were fortunate enough to have a resident artist in with us this year who was working in the classrooms specifically to try to design art projects in the classroom that supported the work. She brought in and connected the classroom teacher to a Native American artist who Skyped in, and then the students and the teacher were able to implement an art project that overlaid with that, which should check both their social studies and their ELA standards. The big framework piece for us throughout this was ensuring that as we build these units out, have we captured the standard as needed, and again, ELA and social studies, and the rigor that's intended in this ed standard. And then if not, there may be an opportunity or a necessity to have a 3-day mini lesson, because we just don't have an answer to that standard as it fits within the inquiry model that we have. As we're operating now, Bridges is that piece in its own entity. We don't have an answer for it yet, but hopefully down the line.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
And similar to Emerson, we're not focused yet on creating totally transdisciplinary PBLs and design cycle and those types of pieces. We will get there. This year was more focused on pick a subject, pick a standard, and try to build a PBL off of that. So you do see a lot of science in this, and science is a natural place to do that because Mystery Science serves as a launch point, and it is inquiry-based in many of its facets anyway, so that is a great resource, and then they just build off of that, and they connect other pieces as they're going through it. But not all of it was science. We did do some Wit and Wisdom fourth grade focused on Module 4 in Wit and Wisdom, and that was kind of the focus for their PBL and how they built off of it. But when we get into, before I get there, 5th grade focused on measurement scale, those types of things. So they were pulling from elements of math, but what we look at it as is we are using the curricular resources to build that foundational knowledge. It doesn't necessarily happen linearly. So what you're doing is you can use it as a launch for some of it, but then you come back and you do mini lessons and you build it in. You may compact a little bit of it because of the time aspect that it takes to do PBLs, but you build that way. And so it's coming back to it throughout the PBL unit development, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I really appreciate that. So Wit and Wisdom and Bridges, great pieces of curriculum, but we have experts here, our teachers, that probably know the best way to deliver curriculum where kids are going to get the most out of it. So I like the flexibility. I love seeing the pictures of all that's what's happening. It makes me feel like I'm there and part of it. It's exciting. I bet the kids love it. I bet the staff loves it. Well done.
Thank you.
Well done.
Can I make a comment? Okay. The layering and the weaving together of district-approved resources, our educational framework, all of the components that make up the district curricular focus, moving all of that into the redesign and the magnets is not easy work. And I commend the staff, everyone who's involved, and Kate, you were talking about all of those individuals who are involved, wrestling with what is not an easy task. You know, when we talk about, and Cheryl, you were talking, it's been 2 years, and I haven't been involved at all. You all have done massive amounts of work in that amount of time to develop that depth and breadth of understanding relationship of how to create difference within standardization. And I commend you for that. That is one of the most difficult tasks. It is wonderful and fun and so energizing to have great ideas, but bringing them into life within a necessary structure, that's where things can get sideways, and they've not. So thank you for that. This is so exciting. And I want to commend both buildings, both staffs, for the intentional relationship with the community. There's been a lot of talk about the engagement with uptown businesses, uptown artists. That's hugely important as our community owns these schools. And that engagement and that connection can only be a wonderful resource for the children and the community as well. Congratulations on the work thus far, and I'm really looking forward to see where this goes.
Thank you.
I'll just add, I know we had asked you guys to go back and to think about all of this again and make sure that it's standardized and consistent across the board. And I want to say thank you. As my colleagues have said, a lot of work has gone into this, and it's really fantastic. I'm curious to see or to hear, I know Ms. Baker had said, what's next for next year? And so I'm curious, what does that look like in each of the buildings next year? What can parents expect to see as we continue to build on this?
So what we would expect to see moving forward for both buildings are doing a summer PD where they're working with their teachers to extend that creation of units to be implemented for the next school year. I would envision that PD is going to go all year long, and by this time next year, we should have a map of units to cover all year long for the next school year. We are building it as we go. As Dr. Nestor Baker mentioned, it does take a lot of time when you're building from the standards and curriculum, and you're stretching and extending for students. And then Mrs. Davison, you did ask about bridges. So the thing that has also come out of this work is we're not doing inquiry-based learning and PBL learning, STEAM, every day, all day. And so there are pieces and parts of that time that is really focused on that, that methodology of how we provide that experience for students. And then there are other times where they're teaching using Bridges curriculum, just as any other teacher across the district. So there's a combination of things happening in our buildings with an aligned focus specific to Emerson and Hamby, and that's exciting.
Truly is. Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry. Oh, I love it. As somebody who was in on some of the, early meetings with Hamby as you were developing this, I'm wondering if, I want to thank you for how far it's come, how much work it's been, and that the different schools have been developing these things, in communication, but something that works for each community. And so I'm wondering, I think to a lot of people who might listen, it's project-based learning, inquiry-based learning, STEAM, World Arts and Fine Arts. Like, can you tell us, like, how's the experience different between the buildings, right? And like, where they are today and where they're headed. Yes. So for a family that, say, a year from now, use your crystal ball a little bit, is trying to decide what box to check for the magnet program, what would the difference be?
I think the difference is exactly what you explained. And so the lived experiences for students varies based upon what the focus is for each building. It is hands-on. They are diving in and exploring with the learning as it pertains to inquiry-based or project-based learning. The different grade levels, it's grown more than what we originally thought. Grade levels are doing something specific that pertains to their grade level standards. And so I think what we want families to understand is it's how we approach the learning for students varies, but both lend themselves into an inquiry, exploratory way of learning and growing as students explore.
Thank you. That's one of the things that I really appreciate, and I'm super old and I've been around for a long time in this district, is that there was a time when people had a sense that, well, I'm just going to say it, we couldn't get a lot of boys to sign up for the Arts Magna program. People, there was just this perception that the boys should be doing math science mostly and the girls should be doing arts. And I think one of the things that I really love about this is it shows that all kids, right, really respond to hands-on stuff. Even back then, if you walked into Hamby, which was arts, it was just kids doing things. And that's what we see here. And walking into the buildings when this is happening, kids are so excited. So I just want to thank you for that. And I think it's just shown that, like, all children, all kinds of children, love to do stuff and learn this way. So thanks.
And so if I could just toot their horn for just a second. So both Chris and Kaylee have done a really good job at the building level with putting information out so that the community and stakeholders are aware of the work. I had the opportunity of visiting both open houses, and our interest for our magnet programs is significantly increasing. I'm looking to Chris because he had the number the last time. What was our total? 280 applicants this year, and that was an increase of almost 100, I think. Almost 100 students. So we're excited that the interest is there and it is growing, and I think it's because people have a better understanding of what our focus is and what we can offer to our students entering the magnet programs.
Great, thank you all.